Good evening, Vipras. This is Dr. Banu Prakash. I am the Vice President for Vipra Vaidya Vedike. From the last 1 month, we have been having a series of webinar meetings. The absence or because of this lockdown, we are having a series of webinar meetings. We had a good response. And today, perhaps we'll have the best, considering that we have some of the stalwart speakers for today's programs.
Very good.
And well, without wasting much time, I will request Dr. Muralidhar, President of VVV, to take over the proceedings, introduce the speakers, and tell about today's program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to everyone. And I'm Dr. Muralidhar. I'm basically a vascular surgeon. I'm the president of the Vipra Vaidya Vedike. And I take this pleasure to invite each and every one of you to this webinar for today evening, and especially our guest speakers, as Dr. Banu has already said, star speakers, Sri Mohandas Pai ji and Ms Nisha Holla ji, and we are definitely honored to have them today with us. And also they will be enlightening us on the most talked about and the hot topic of the season, economy and the human capital. Our Vipra Vaidya Vedike was founded 2 years ago with the sole intention of bringing doctors from Brahmin community together on a common platform. And we have grown steadily. We have a number of programs, helping the poor students, meritorious students, as well as conducting medical camps. And we have also a lot of plans to introduce a lot of social activities for the future once we come out of this COVID season. Then the Voice of Vipras is an initiative of the Vipra Vaidya Vedike. It's a global networking platform to bring Vipras from across the globe on one platform. We have included Business by Brahmins, Vipra Professional Forum, Vipra Business Forum, to name a few, and we are going to include more such fora. And we have been organizing useful online programs and educate the masses on the common topics which are needed for today's the current season. So I also request at this juncture all the attendees to mute yourself, and only those who will be talking will be unmuted. And you can post your questions in the chat box. It will be answered at the end. And please be precise and brief. And your answers also will be brief. I request our Mohandas Pai also to be brief, while we can take maximum questions. And wasting much time, I wish you all a very happy evening. Enjoy the talk. And now I call Karthik Pandit to say a few words. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Namaste Mohandas sir, and Namaste Nisha Holla. I am Dr. Karthik Pandit. I am the Director, Vipra Professional Forum, Mysuru. So 2 years back, we started this Vipra Professional Forum, or we call it as VPF in Mysore. So with the sole intention of bringing, collectively bringing out all the professionals under one group, all Vipra professionals. We have 8 verticals. We have also started one of the verticals for a Purohitru, or the Archakas. So that also we felt was the main aim, and we have more than 800 people. And the main aim of this Vipra Professional Forum is to impart a professionalism, or to share it, to make a platform for exchange of across professional ideas and networking. So with the sole intention, we have started Vipra Professional Forum. We also had last year, we had a lot of activities. We even had one of the thing called something like Vipra Talk, in the similar way of the TED Talk by our young Vipra entrepreneurs. We do have conduct a lot of educational activities just to enlighten our fellow Vipras professionals to gain their professional efficiency. With that small introduction of our thing, I once again thank Mohandas sir and Nisha Holla for taking their time out. And we all look forward for your talk, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, we have Mr. Sham. He is representing BBB, Business by Brahmin. I would like Sham Sundar Subrao to introduce yourself and your organization, a brief one. Sir, you have to unmute Sham Sundar Subrao.
Yeah, Suraj, Sham Sundar.
I'll do it. Huh?
Yeah, Sham Sundar is unmuted.
Yes.
Okay.
Sham sir.
Yalrigu namaskara. Good evening, everybody. On behalf of BBB Trust Business by Brahmin, I, Sham Sundar, one of the trustee of the trust, is happy to introduce our forum here to be part of the event today. Business by Brahmin Trust, this was initiated by like-minded Brahmin people in 2017, is now registered as a trust in Mysuru, which was registered in 2019. We are around 274 members across 4 chapters in Karnataka. We have 2 chapters in Mysuru, Vishweshwaraya chapter and Chanakya chapter. We have 2 more chapters in Bangalore, Malleshwaram and Baswangidi chapter. And we have 1 more chapter coming up, Aryapeta chapter in Bangalore, Sainagar shortly. With the strong members of 274 Vipras, Brahmins, we have done a business up to a tune of 16 crore rupees. It's purely a business forum where we meet every fortnight in a place, hotel, in all these branches. In Mysuru, we meet at Hotel Nalpa, and we exchange the business ideas. We have KYT and other things. We are going forward and we are working together with the VPF Mysuru and other organizations for a successful Brahmin community-based business to strengthen all the Brahmin-related businessmen and also the business forum to work together and uplift the Brahmin community in the sole intention of increasing the business. We are very happy that Dr. Mohandas Pai and Nisha Holla from the Brahmin community is giving a presentation today, and all of us from the 4 chapters, we are joining today to strengthen this platform of Brahmin Vedike to bring synergy among us and to be on win-win initiation. Thank you. I hand over now the mic to Muralidhar or to Karthik. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Sham Sundar. Another organization associated with today's program is Vipra Business Forum. I request Mr. Jaitirtha to talk about the Vipra Business Forum for about a minute. Hello?
Yes, Suraj.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he is unmuted. Please.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ವಿಪ್ರಾ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಫೋರಂ ನ ಪರವಾಗಿ ನನಗೆ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ನಮ್ಮ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಪರಿಚಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ವಂದನೆ ತಿಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಇವತ್ತು ಮೋಹನ್ ದಾಸ್ ಪೈ ಅಂತವರ ಎದುರುಗಡೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಪರಿಚಯ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಹೆಮ್ಮೆ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಮೋಹನ್ ದಾಸ್ ಪೈಜಿ ವಿಪ್ರಾ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಫೋರಂ 3 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಮುಂಚೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು 10-15 ಜನ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಓನರ್ಸ್ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರಿ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ಒಂದು ಯೋಜನೆಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಈಗ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು 3 ಝೋನ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿ ತಿಂಗಳು ಒಂದು ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸುಮಾರು ಒಂದು 50ರಿಂದ 60 ಜನ ಸೇರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ನಮ್ದು ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಅನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೀವಿ. ಸುಮಾರು 6 ಗುಂಪು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಇದೆ. ಪ್ರತಿದಿನ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿಗಳನ್ನ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸುಮಾರು 1200 ಜನ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು 7 ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಈ ರೀತಿ ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಗಳಿದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ರೆಫರಲ್ ಜೊತೆಗೆ MSME ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಕೂಡ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಒಂದು 5 ಕೋಟಿಯಷ್ಟು ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಗಳಿಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇದುವರೆಗೂ ಒಂದು 25 crores ಅಷ್ಟು ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದುವರೆಗೂ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಈ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಮಾಹಿತಿಯನ್ನ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಮತ್ತು ವಿಪ್ರ ವೈದ್ಯ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪದಾಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಿಗೆ.
Thank you, Jai Tirtha avare. Namaskara. I thank all the members, the frontal organizations for being part for today's program. I request now Dr. Satya to introduce our guest speakers. Over to Dr. Satya.
Thank you, Dr. Banu Prakash. Now, it may be quite easy for Dr. Mohandas Pai and Nisha Holla to, talk, but it is extremely challenging task to introduce this phenomenon called, Mohandas Pai or MDP. So, happy Yoga Day, happy Father's Day to those who celebrate. Padma Shri TV Mohandas Pai is the chairman of the Manipal Global Education Human Resources Leadership, and the best CEO in 2001. He is a single force, behind transforming Infosys since 1994 till he voluntarily relinquished to get younger blood into the Infosys group. He is the trustee of the International Financial Reporting Standards. There are so many facets to this, esteemed individual. However, there are lesser but noteworthy things to be spoken of. He is the Purusha Simha for speaking truth and standing up against, fake reporting and on the social media like Twitter or television. He really stands out for speaking and calling a spade a spade. He is also involved with Akshaya Patra. He is the board of trustees. He is also on board of many other industries. His passion is now towards getting the startup investor, helping them, encouraging their aspirations. And last of all, he has produced an animated Sanskrit movie called Punyakoti. Therefore, it has been my privilege and honor to introduce MDP. In the same breath, let me introduce Ms Nisha Holla. She is a computational physicist and researcher. Now, that made my task little difficult because from the time I studied my physics, I did not know there was something called as computational physics. So I had to read up what it is. So thereby, she is quite an accomplished academician, graduated from Carnegie Mellon from the USA in 2013, worked in Silicon Valley, moved back to 2017, moved back to India, and she's been consulting editor at Your Story Media. She has authored several articles in impacted journals, highly impacted journals. And from 2019, she's been with the Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms and as a technology fellow. She's involved in study and implementation of, many other research, financial research, economy related things. So I hope I have done justice to these luminaries. And over to MDP and Nisha Holla.
Thank you, Dr. Satya. I request all the participants to unmute, to mute their phones. And in case if they have any queries, they can send it via chat to the administrators. Over to the speaker, sir.
Suraj,
Hello.
Sorry. Okay, now, yeah, I'm muted. Sorry. Folks, thank you very much for inviting me, especially Dr. Satya. I've been going to him for consulting, and I know he's a wonderful doctor. He has made me whole again. And I want to thank all of you for getting the Brahmin community together. For many years, the Brahmin community has not been together. It's time that the Brahmins as a community come together all over India and get the rights that are due to them under the constitution. And I think for a very, very long time, there has been discrimination against Brahmins. It's time we all stood up to assert ourselves as free citizens of this great country. So let me start my talk by saying that post-COVID, we are going to see a new normal all around the world. Nisha, next. Nisha, next, please.
I've switched it.
Yeah. Folks, this is old data. Right now, the COVID cases have gone to more than 8.4 million, maybe 450,000 people are dead. But the key issue I want to say in this slide is, COVID is the first time in the last 100 years when we had a truly global event. It has impacted a larger part of the world physically than anything else in the last 100 years. In the last 100 years, we've seen the First World War, we've seen the Second World War, we have seen the Spanish flu. But both the First World War and Second World War, even though they're world wars, did not impact a larger part of the world than what we have today. And most countries have been impacted. So this is a truly global event. 2008, we had the global financial crisis, but that is the crisis of the United States and Europe, and maybe a little bit in Japan, but didn't impact the rest of the world. Now every single country is impacted. We do not know the cure for this. We do not know when it's going to end. There has been lockdown, and there's been a tremendous impact on the global GDP. But if you look at the Indian position on a per capita basis, per million basis, India has done reasonably well, even though the number of infections are galloping every single day all across the country. So we have to watch out for this impact. But one thing is very sure, that post-COVID, we're going to see a very different kind of world, and we'll explain why. Next, please. So India has acted early and robustly. We had a lockdown, and we have taken all the precautions, and we have made sure that throughout this country, we build up capacity, we build up our ability to take care through enhanced testing, and also to make sure that there's enough medical attention given to people, even though in Mumbai and Delhi, everything is getting overwhelmed because of a certain spike in cases. And whenever we look at cases, we need to look at deaths and infection on a per million basis. Yes, Nisha, next. Now, what is the economic impact? We have not seen this kind of economic impact in the last 100 years. Even during the war years, the economy grew, because in the war years, you spend money. People are out in the open. People are, of course, fighting. People are dying. In the First World War, we had 16 million people die. In the Second World War, 60 million people die. There were large-scale destruction in many countries on the world, but the global GDP grew. Now we are seeing that pre-COVID, IMF has said the world GDP of $82 trillion will grow by 2.5%. Now they're saying that based on the first quarter actuals, the world may degrow minus 3.2%. But my personal view is the world may degrow 8 to 10% this year. And the reason is very clear. We are seeing the maximum impact in April, May, June. And this quarter is going to be a terrible quarter for all around the world. And in UK, there has been a 20% decline in GDP in the month of April. So we're going to see the impact of that in the second quarter. And the third and fourth quarter of this calendar year, the world GDP could recover. But for the whole year, we could be between 8 to 10 trillion dollars. So $82 trillion could come down, and that will be terrible. And if you look at the United States, in the first quarter, they already came down by 4.8%. And for the whole year, they estimate maybe 6%. Europe, minus 7.5%. Now, India is a strange case. We went into this year saying that we'll grow around 6%. The first quarter, that is the last quarter of the last financial year, came in at plus 3.1 because we had a good growth in January, February. But I think this quarter is going to be a disaster. For example, in the month of April, not a single car was sold. Not a single car was sold, where we normally sell about 300,000 cars, because everything was shut down. Japan has been in a recession for the last 20 years. They're not grown. And there, I think the first quarter, it was 0.85%. And I think for the whole year, it could be minus 5.2. China came down the first quarter minus 6.8. And China has been growing at 8.5%, 9% a year for the last 30 years. And for the whole year, they may grow maybe 1.2% because this quarter they've grown, but world demand has been suppressed. Now, because of this COVID, many of the countries have come out with stimuluses. They come out with reduction in interest rates. The central banks of the countries, various countries, have reduced interest rates. In the United States, the Federal Reserve reduced the interest rate to 0.25%. Japan is negative. Folks, you'll be surprised. Around the world before COVID, there was $36 trillion of government bonds, out of which $18 trillion were quoting at negative interest rates. That means if you invest 100 rupees, you may actually get back maybe 94, 95 after 5 to 7 years. And I don't know why people are investing. They're being forced to invest because they want to park their money. In Japan has got negative interest rates. Germany had negative interest rates. France had negative interest rates. India's interest has come down from about 5% to 4%. And the ECB, the European Central Bank, has brought it down to 0.5% minus. So all around the world, interest rates have come down, and all central banks are pumping liquidity madly into the economies. Why they're pumping liquidity? The reason is very clear, because when everything comes to a standstill, there is no circulation of money. People are not paying the debts. People are not getting the revenues. People are not spending money. So if you create liquidity, the banks may lend money, guaranteed loans by the government, and that money could be used to pay and kickstart the economy. And that's why they pumped in huge amount of liquidity, as I'll explain later. Next, Nisha. Now here you can see the baseline growth. That is the US, China, Europe, India, Japan are coming down. And by 2021, that is a calendar year, next year calendar year, they could come back to between 97 to 100% of the GDP of 2020. So this year is a gone year, is a break year, and the next year hopefully is a recovery year. But I fear that Europe may not recover at all, because Europe has got major problems. Like Angela Merkel said, Europe is 25% of the world's GDP, but spends 40% of social spending. And Western Europe is much older, and you have an economic slowdown and zero interest rates. It's going to take a long time for you to recover. So Europe, which is growing at 1.5%, may not recover, may be broken. So we have to see what happens. Japan is very difficult for them to come up, because they've been growing at 0 to 1% for the last maybe 20 years. And there is deflation in Japan. And the only reason per capita income is going up is primarily because the population is shrinking. This last calendar year, I think the Japanese had 1.4 million people die and about 845,000 babies. In India, we complain we are producing too many babies. We are not producing too many babies. The number of babies produced every year is coming down, but the Japanese are seeing more people die. So the Japanese population of 124 million may come down to 96 million by 2050 and to about 67 million by 2100. So their population is actually shrinking, and that's dangerous. So this COVID will change the global financial architecture and the global GDP. Next, please. Now here, the COVID has had a tremendous impact on world unemployment. The US saw 40 million people file for unemployment benefits. And that means that the number of people filing for unemployment was larger than than in 1929, post the Depression. So the US has seen a huge spike, and all of them are getting unemployment insurance. So last week, there's a report that 2.5 million jobs have come back. So the US is in a hurry to open up, even though the virus can explode in the US, and it is exploding, but they're taking the risk because all countries are saying, we have lockdown, but we have to open. If we don't open, we're going to have an unprecedented economic crisis, and we don't have the money. So you could see here the number of Americans who have filed for unemployment insurance, and you've seen in Africa, America, the Arab states, everywhere, that informal employment, that is people who don't get social security, may not see the employment coming back. We will talk about India slightly later, but globally you can see that the impact is indeed very, very high. Yes, Nisha? Now, this time it is different. Yeah, we always say everything is different, but it's different for various reasons. It's more intense and sudden. It's like falling off a cliff. Just in the month of April, most countries announced a lockdown. Everything was shut down. Everything was shut down. Nobody on the streets. The hotels were shut down. The restaurants were shut down. The malls were shut down. Retail was shut down. Airlines were shut down. Everything was shut down, and people stayed at home. So there's been a sudden drop in business volumes and consumer confidence. We've not seen it before. It's very pervasive. So it's gone across all industries, all countries. And at this point of time when this happened, the world's economy was very fragile because Europe was not growing. US was sputtering. India was also in some kind of economic trouble because we are not grown in the last 2 quarters of the last fiscal year. And we are seeing Japan just being flat. China was not growing because of Trump's China trade. We raised the tariffs on Chinese exports to the United States, and there was an impact on China too. So the global economies are more integrated. China makes up 24% of the world manufacturing. The global supply chains have gone to China. So exports as percent GDP grew from 19%, 30% 2018. And we've seen international tourist arrival go up to 1.48 billion people. Now for countries like Thailand, where 25, 30% GDP depends on tourism, if tourism becomes zero in a month, they are in deep, deep trouble. Many people are standing in lines for food. They don't have food. I saw an article that in the outskirts of New York, somebody was giving free food. They expected 500 people to come, but 1,500 people came in big cars. And they were asked, you're all in the big car. Don't you have food? They all replied, yeah, we don't have money to pay EMI. We don't have money to pay for fuel. We don't have money. So we have to come for food. So this is a very unprecedented crisis. Which happened all of a sudden, and this is there all over the world. Next. Now, the COVID has exposed the world's over-reliance on China. So the whole world is vulnerable because China has become the factory of the world, the largest exporter, largest importer, with the largest foreign currency reserves. And if China has built the global supply chain, so all manufacture depends on China. Everybody buys from China. Recently, Rajiv Bajaj was on TV to say that about 5% of his components are from China because China can give you scale at very low cost. So China has been the dominant factor, and every country is now acutely aware that they won't depend on China because China is a global manufacturing power. For example, the United States found that 92% of some drugs come from China. India found that 75% of APIs, which are the ingredients for making drugs, comes from China. Japan just found that a large part of its component that they use for the vehicles come from China. A large part of the components, electric vehicles, come from China. So everything comes from China. The UK is also in deep trouble. And all countries are now putting up barriers because the Chinese went to lockdown in February, March. They come out of the lockdown. They're again manufacturing. And now the countries like Germany and Europe are putting up barriers for Chinese companies to buy into their companies. Japan has said that 450 big companies will be national champions, and nobody else can buy. India says in approval that commonly. China is a great power. China is $15.5 trillion in GDP. India is $3 trillion. The United States is 21, and Europe is 21. In PPP, purchasing power parity, China's GDP is 25 trillion. It is certainly a very, very big gorilla. And being the good gorilla and a great power, the China is behaving like a bully in the bad COVID time. We've seen what they did to our border, etc. Now, this impact has exposed the Chinese influence. And Japan, for instance, is spending $2 billion to get their companies back from China. So we are seeing around the world that all countries are trying to get the industries back from China. But the globalization of the last 20 years may be in retreat. We must remember that export import has become free all around the world. You can buy anything on Amazon. It will come to your house, and you can travel to any part of the world. You can get a visa on arrival. You can pick up airline ticket. Now all that will be under threat because the world is saying that globalization has worked to China's benefit. We are not benefited. Yes, we get the cheaper goods, but the cheaper goods are not a substitute for self-reliance. Because China shuts down, we are all in deep trouble. Next. Now, this is an interesting slide. The IMF says that globally, the total stimulus given by the governments is about $9 trillion. $9 trillion. The United States is 3 trillion, Japan is 2 trillion, Germany is 1.5. Even India has done its bit, 267 billion, even though out of this, possibly only about maybe 10% or 15% can actually impact the budget in terms of fiscal deficit. Less is all liquidity. Out of 20 lakh crores, the RBI's liquidity is about 8.5 lakh crores. Even out of the balance 11.5 crores, about maybe 7.5 lakh crores is all about loans and guaranteed, etc. The same thing is there. In UK, for instance, the government is paying for people to come to get their salaries up to 80% of £2,500 up to August. And even in the United States, they're giving money to all MSMEs by guaranteed loans to pay their wages. And in case they show that they're not laid off people, they're willing to write it off. Japan gave $750 to every single Japanese by account transfer. Of course, many of them could not transfer. And China has come with a spending stimulus. Germany has got 8 million people who are on unemployment dole, who are gone for retraining, etc. So we must understand this is very, very big. But what it will do is that there'll be a huge amount of liquidity around the world. And this liquidity means for the next 4 to 5 years, interest rates globally will be very, very low. Because when interest rates come low and many companies borrow money, they become what is called zombie companies. Zombie companies are those companies which can pay interest but can never pay back the principal for any loan. So all the central banks know that they cannot raise interest rates anymore. In fact, the Federal Reserve has said for the next 2 years, we are not going to raise interest rates. But the huge surge of liquidity, and the liquidity could go to the emerging markets, can come to India and create asset bubbles. They could be looking for higher returns. In fact, in Germany and in Europe, pensioners are deeply hurt because maybe 10, 12 years back, they're getting 6 to 7% on the bank deposits. Now they're getting 0.5%, and some of the banks are not paying them any interest at all. And if you depend on interest for a living, you are in very, very deep trouble. The same thing in the UK, the same thing in the US. In US too, 10-year government bonds are now at 0.69%. In India, 10-year government bonds are at 5.8%. All the banks are reduced FD interest, and only borrowers will find it easier because they'll be able to borrow. And I would request the Brahmin community to go borrow lots of money at very low rates, and not to be scared, and to build up your assets, because it's the best time to be a borrower. And if you are a saver and you are putting money there, well, you're not going to get good returns. You got to be very careful where you put your money. And I'm sure that, if as Dr. Satya says, we will introduce a very, very good portfolio manager who is very, very conservative to tell you what is happening in the markets, where to earn superior returns, etc. Because I think you people should also learn a little bit about that and get exposed to that kind of market. But we are seeing that the world economy is depending on stimulus. All the governments have come out, but the government's ability to do this is limited. Can the US go to 5 trillion? Yes. Can India go to 1 trillion? No. Can Japan go to 3 trillion? Yes. Can Germany go to 5 trillion? Yes. So I think by the time it ends, we could see maybe 12, 15 trillion dollars, because things are not going to come back so very fast because the virus is still running its course. So there has been a huge increase in stimulus on the world. Next. So India's relief measure, like I said, these are some of the data, percent of GDP. India has got a 20 lakh relief. Interest rates have come down. Government has given 3 lakh crores of guaranteed loans to MSMEs. Just yesterday, Prime Minister announced a 50,000 crore loan, 50,000 crore program for migrants who have gone back. And you'll see a very important thing in India. India has about maybe 7 crore migrants who have gone from the north to the south. The whole of the south has a fertility less than replacement rate. The north has surplus labor. The jobs are in the south. The people from the north come down or they go to Delhi. And now when everything shut down, about maybe 1 crore people have gone back. UP has got about 35 lakh people. Now when they go back to the village, they've gone back with skills. Hopefully, they will be able to use the skills to develop their own villages and their own areas. But the government has come with a 50,000 crore program to make sure they get money, their money is paid to them to create employment, etc. So we are seeing the fault lines in India get exposed. What are the fault lines? Most companies, MSMEs, don't have enough cash to pay for labor. So unemployment has gone to, as per CMIE, 12 crore people. Now, of course, in the last 2-3 weeks, it has come down to 8 crore people. So we have an unemployment problem. We have a migrant problem because so many people come to the big cities. Now their jobs are gone, they're gone back. There's a problem. We have a problem where 30% of tax collection of this year may not come. The government fiscal debt will go up from 3.5% to about 5 to 6%. Government is supposed to borrow 7 crore rupees. Now they have to borrow 12 lakh crore rupees, 7 lakh crore rupees. They have to borrow 12 lakh crore rupees. The states were to borrow something like 3% of GDP. Now they have to go to 5%. April, May, most of the states had no revenues. So Karnataka opened up liquor and got a lot of money because liquor and, petrol, diesel taxes and, and taxes on property make up a large part of what they can do apart from GST. So I think government is pumping in liquidity. Government is opening up. So this year will be a break year where we'll have negative growth. So India may have a GDP growth of minus 5%. Everybody is saying will be 5%. Our GDP was 204 lakh crores, 204 lakh crores, $2.73 trillion. And it may actually come down this year by 10 lakh crores. So we will not be the same GDP as was on 31st March 2020. And we may reach the same GDP only in 31st March 2022. So we're going to have 2 bad years, but this can be the time when we can reconfigure the economy. Next, Nisha. Now, crude oil has collapsed. The world consumes 100 million barrels of crude, and suddenly 30 million barrels disappeared. It disappeared because China was a large consumer. It shut down. And the US was pumping out 13.7 million barrels a day because of fuel gas. And the oil price came down to $16 for Brent and $11 for WTI, that is Texas crude. And oil also went into negative. So because of derivatives expiring, you have to pay $37 if you're a buyer, to let somebody to take delivery. So oil consumption has come down from 100 million, it's come down to something like about 90, 91 million. So oil prices have come down and government has raised tax. So this may impact the geopolitical conditions around the world. And you may see that most of these oil exporting countries have balanced the budget at very high rates. Saudi Arabia at about $85 to a barrel, Iraq and other countries at a higher rate. And this is not going to come. Even Russia is in a deep trouble because they were banking on oil for a large part of their foreign exchange reserves. The reserves of Saudi Arabia has come down to about 450 billion. This year, there may be a whole of $50 billion. So certainly, oil industry is in deep trouble. Next. The airline industry has collapsed. You can see this slide, Zoom going up. We are all on Zoom. So instead of traveling locally and, spending 12 hours to go somewhere for a 1-hour meeting, we're happy sitting in our houses and doing everything. Even our doctors are now very happy taking Zoom consulting instead of traveling 1 hour, 2 hours in the car and going to a hospital and having 100 people sit outside. They can probably do things much better. They may be happier. But you can see this chart. Aviation is gone. International travel is still not started. National travel is gone. All the 10 top airline industries may get into bankruptcy. They're all getting bailed out. They don't have enough cash. The US is spending $45 billion. Japan has given them a bailout. Lufthansa got a bailout. Even Emirates is trying to borrow money. So I think we are seeing this. So for the next 3 to 4 years, the airline industry may be in trouble. If the airline industry is in trouble, the airports are in trouble, the hotels are in trouble, tourism is in trouble. Tourism and services like restaurants are the largest employers all around the world. And all of them are in deep trouble. We don't know when they're going to open. And this is going to cause deep economic problems. Next. New normal. What is the new normal? The beneficiaries have been the tech companies. Apple's market cap has gone to 1.5 trillion. I think Google is close to $1 trillion or more. And now we have Microsoft 1.4 trillion. Amazon is 1.3 trillion. But all these companies have built up an ecosystem where everything is done digitally. The impact of all that, I think Nisha will explain to you how the digital impact has come, how our lives have changed, etc. And you can see that the future is going to be global tech. These are all global monopolies. They're trying to dominate our lives. So all of us have got to find a new battle. The new battle is, how do you preserve our fundamental rights, our rights as individuals, against all these global giants who suddenly become very, very big with huge amount of resources and huge cash flows. Next. Nisha, you going to talk from here? Are you going to talk from here, Nisha?
2 more slides and then I'll take over.
Okay. In the new normal 2, now folks, when we shut down on maybe 25th of March, what did we do? All of us use a mobile app to buy our groceries from Big Basket or somewhere. We went to the mobile apps to see entertainment in Hotstar or Netflix. We use the mobile apps for children to get educated. Byju's and everybody got more subscribers. We use the mobile apps to talk to our doctors on telemedicine. And we use the mobile app to make banking transactions. Now, this all happened because we have a huge, digital economy. And both Jio and Airtel have created huge capacity. The consumption for the last quarter till March was 40.5 GB for Airtel and 11 GB for Jio, one of the highest in the world. And if you look at the startups, all these startups for the last 2-3 years have grown tremendously. So we are seeing the number of digital natives going to the digital world to do business is very, very high. Let me give you some data. India has 45,000 startups. They got $60 billion in the last 6 years. They created $160 billion of value. We got 32 unicorns, billion-dollar enterprises. By 2025, we'll have 100,000 startups. They would have got another $80-90 billion from now till 2025. We'll have 100 unicorns and they'll get $500 billion of value. So we're seeing a digital revolution. We're seeing everything get digitized and we are all part of it and we adopted to it immediately. The baby boomers, those born of Second World War, who in the 60s or 70s are doing it as much as young children who were just was in school. I was told that many young children around India get up in the morning, put up their uniforms, sit in front of the PC till 4 o'clock, then remove the uniform and go and do whatever they do to play. So you see this slide, out of 7.75 billion people in the world, about 5.19 unique mobile phones are there, 4.54 billion are on the internet, and active social media 3.8. The internet users today could have gone up to possibly 5 billion or 5.5 billion. Very soon in 2 years, 90% of the world will be on the internet and they'll be here. For India, 1.37 billion people, mobile connection 1.06, 900 million unique phones, and 687 million people on the internet. If you look at the digital world, India ranks very low because Singapore with 5 million people comes number 1. But India has 1.37 billion people, out of which half of them are on the internet. And social media is 400 million. That's what Dr. Satya was saying. Our battle for identity, our battle for many things will be on social media because these platforms are growing. Facebook is the largest country in the world with 2.6 billion users, not China with 1.45 billion. So the world has gone digital. India has benefited. The world has changed. There have been some benefits. People's habits have changed because of the lockdown and the environment has become free. In many parts of India and the world, we saw blue skies. We are breathing fresh air. I'm sure Dr. Satya, I don't know whether there's a good thing or a bad thing that people are breathing fresh air, becoming healthier, the lungs are getting better. And hopefully, you can advise them how to do things much better, become healthier. But we are seeing a clean water. The Ganges is flowing cleaner. The Jamuna is flowing cleaner. Even in Bangalore, the Vishwabhati, I think that our small river is looking much more cleaner. So there's been a tremendous impact on the environment, which is very, very positive. But as we come off COVID, things could go back. So we have to protect ourselves against that. Next. Next, Nisha. Okay,
Yeah,
Nisha, you take over and speak from there. Yeah, please.
Hello?
Yeah, please.
Great. So, folks, I want to go back to this slide for a second. Now, this information is as of Jan 2020, and we can expect, as MDP said, that during the COVID and the lockdown, the number of mobile phone connections and the number of internet users must have really increased because people are now using the internet to get food delivered home, to get groceries delivered home during COVID, to get their pharmaceuticals delivered home, to get telemedicine, to get e-consultations, and to get education learning at home. So this is really skyrocketed. And so now what we're seeing is technology is enabling growth, both economic growth and personal growth. It's enabling governance, and it's enabling our future. And so I will talk about some specific examples about how technology is enabling all these things and where the opportunities for India are in the future. So first off, opportunity capture, right? Now, let me take an example of groceries. Before COVID, most of us could not even imagine getting our groceries delivered home. We either walk to the Kirana store, we walk to our supermarket, people would bring their vegetables and fruits on a cart in front of our house and we would pick it up. Now with the coronavirus, we're all scared. We all want to stay at home. We don't want to get in trouble. So we want contactless, touchless groceries coming home. And so that's why you can see grocery e-commerce has gone up by 110% in 3 months. This is unprecedented, and no one could have ever imagined this would happen before such a big virus and pandemic hit all of us. Another example is home and furniture. Now, the normal that we are all used to is to go to the furniture store, maybe pick a customized furniture, ask the furniture maker to make something specifically for us. Today, because of COVID, everyone's ordering their furniture online. The furniture is coming all the way home. You're picking out what furniture you want on a screen sitting in your home. And more importantly, the value that is being captured here, this 15-20%, is not so much by the furniture makers, but by the agile tech companies that are now taking these opportunities and growing their businesses because of this, because of the COVID impact and the opportunities the lockdown is providing them. Meanwhile, if you look at the red side, right now, whoever thought that airlines would not be flying, people would be scared to fly. Over the last 5 years, we Indians have been traveling so much. There are now 100 flights a day to Guwahati, Northeast, whereas 9-10 years ago, there were hardly maybe 2-3 flights, right? So Indians were flying so much that it was unthinkable that all of us would sit at home and that flights would not be flying. It was unthinkable that cabs would not be on the road, Ola, Uber, the cabs, what have you. It was unthinkable that the movie theaters would be empty. In India, everyone loves their Bollywood movies and other movies. And it was unthinkable that the movie theaters would be empty. And so there are a lot of both negative impact and positive impact of different kinds coming out of this new normal of COVID. And so now I'd like to go into some specific examples of how tech companies in particular are grabbing this opportunity. First off, post cash, right? Now, again, yes, we had demonetization. Yes, we've had a proliferation of digital platforms in India, UPI, and our platforms that run on UPI like Paytm, PhonePe, etc., have taken off. We've all started using digital platforms, but we still liked our cash, right? But now, because of COVID, everyone's scared to transfer any item from one hand to the other. So the use of cash is rapidly decreasing, whereas the use of debit or credit cards, and especially digital wallets and net banking, has really taken off. There's an increase in all of them. And most importantly, these are trends that are here to remain. So because a lot of consumers are saying that even over the next 6 months or till whenever the COVID impact goes away, they will continue to use these credit cards and digital wallets and so on. And for all we know, a year down the line, these may become permanent trends and India may stop using cash altogether. So these are very interesting trends that tech companies are starting to look at as opportunity captures. Next, digital content. Digital content has been very interesting. Now, over the last 5 years, the use of data by Indians has rapidly gone up. Indians are consuming a lot of content online. They're gaming. So if you see the entertainment and the gaming industries have really taken off. But during these last 60-90 days where everyone was at home, it's gone up by 34%, it's gone up by 41%. You can see Jio is saying their subscribers on average use 11 GB per month. Airtel says their subscribers are using 15 GB per month. That's a lot of bandwidth. And what are people doing with it? They're watching shows. They're watching shows on Netflix. They're listening to music on, say, Savan. They're watching YouTube. So see, YouTube's really skyrocketed from January to March. And we can expect that this trend has held up or accelerated even further during the lockdown because people were at home. They could not move. They could not go to their theaters or to the park or spend time with their friends. So everyone turned to their digital content platforms. And so these platforms have really taken off, and it'll be very interesting to see what they will do next, because these trends are now becoming permanent in all of our lives. Next up, education. This, I think, education has been one of the biggest breakthrough sectors for India, especially because think about it, folks. How many of us could ever think that there would be a time when there would be 90 days where we would tell our children to stay at home and not go to school or not go to college or sit at home and learn? It was unthinkable even 3 months ago, but now it has happened thanks to COVID. And the interesting thing now is that education tech platforms have become so valuable because so many people have been at home, but they want their children to access high quality content, and more importantly, content that keeps them engaged. And so that's why education tech platforms have become very important. And education tech, I think, has been one of India's premier successes in the startup ecosystem. Most of the other platforms, social media especially, the world is dominated by American companies, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and so on. But in education, India dominates the world. And of course, Byju's is the category leader there. Byju's is now a $7 or $8 billion company. It is the most profitable and the biggest education tech company in the world. And it has come from India. It has come from Bangalore. And that's why we're all very proud of the success of this company. Byju's continues to grow. They've, they've more than doubled their revenues every year. And especially with COVID lockdown, they've seen that a lot of parents are subscribing to the Byju's app to make sure that their children are kept engaged and the children keep learning through the lockdown and not waste time watching other kinds of media. So education tech is at a tipping point, or rather an inflection point in the world today with the lockdown. And it's going to be very interesting to see how opportunities are captured in this area. Next, health tech. And here, we've compiled 4 or 5 slides specially for our audience today, because you're all supreme health professionals. You'll have really helped us out in the COVID era. And this is how I hope we can continue helping you with a little more of health tech to be able to supplement what you're doing in India. Now, in India, especially, the World Bank has estimated that we have a shortage of both doctors and trained staff in nursing, trained staff in diagnostics, trained staff in radiology, and so on. And that's where technology can really come into play. Now, we're all familiar with the India Stack, which has been a premier public-private partnership success from India. It is the JAM stack, so the Jandan plus Aadhaar plus mobile. And I'll go into details about it a little bit later. But what is interesting is now we are turning the same capabilities of the JAM and India stack towards building a health stack. Now, what is being proposed today, which will really help hospital management, because taking a step back, before COVID, what happened was all healthcare systems were in certain silos. And when the COVID hit, we all realized that healthcare systems need to coordinate, not only amongst themselves, but even with the government. So there was a need for an open collaborative platform that can identify, for example, vacancies in COVID wards in separate hospitals, so that hospitals can, with excess patients, can then move their patients to the one where there are vacancies, so on and so forth. So now we need this open collaborative platform, and the National Health Stack, or the Bharat Health Stack, proves to be where we are going in the future. So the idea behind the health stack is that a lot of these layers will be private layers, right? The augmentation layer, a plumbing layer, which will have a flow of patients, of health information, of money, so on and so forth, so that healthcare hospitals and so on can get paid really quickly. So it's an integrated network. But on top of that, the government and private hospitals and so on can have their own private layer to run their hospital. So it's a 2-layer system. One layer is private, it's for the hospital or it's for the government. And then the next layer, everyone's collaborating with each other, so that the health management becomes much easier, especially if another COVID-like virus hits us. Now, just an example of how technology is helping health. There are many examples, and I have a few more to show you, but Dozy is very interesting because especially now, if you look in Mumbai or Delhi, there is a huge problem where they don't have enough beds to keep COVID patients. They don't have enough beds for the asymptomatic patients. They don't have enough beds for the patients who need ventilators and other respiratory aids. So this DOSI is very interesting because it's a medical grade sensor that can be placed under any mattress. So you can, with all the makeshifting that is happening, they're converting hotels into hospitals, they're converting big godowns and big stadiums into hospitals. And so this DOSI like medical sensor, you can just get any mattress in, you can place the sensor on it, and voila, you have a medical bed that can do a lot of the monitoring that is required to for a patient. It is contact free, and so with the number of doctors that and nurses that are contracting the virus because they are selflessly taking care of the COVID patients, this will be a game changer in also protecting the health of our care workers while maintaining the same level of healthcare we want to give the patients. So there's a lot of value add that technology can bring into managing a pandemic like this. Next, now we have a big paucity of trained medical doctors, trained medical staff in India. Radiologists, diagnostic staff are also in very, very high paucity. So now with, for example, a platform like SickTuple runs a machine learning based cloud to do very quick diagnosis of biological fluids like urine or blood and so on. And so what a platform like this can do is supplement the radiologists or the diagnostics or the pathologists work, so that their work can be their burden of work can be reduced. They can do more of the patient management and collecting the samples and so on, and they can use a machine learning based platform to do the routine work, so to speak. Another interesting company is Bugworks. It's very interesting to me that the last antibiotic that was discovered in the whole world was in the 1960s, almost 60 years ago. After that, not a single antibiotic has been designed or discovered for a very simple reason. Most companies, or rather all companies, until companies like Bugworks came along, these huge pharmaceutical giants that would have big labs of thousands of PhD students just trying one chemical at a time. Instead, here comes a company like Bugworks that run a machine learning platform integrated with computational biology, integrated with computational chemistry, and they can all of a sudden screen 5,000 candidates at one time, pick the most promising antibiotic components, and now send it for lab testing. And all of a sudden you have 10 very, very high fidelity compounds that can be the next antibiotics. And of course, you all know this better than me, antimicrobial resistance is becoming a huge problem. And so it is imperative to join tech to finding new antibiotics and other antivirals, antifungals, and so machine learning is the new way and the best way to now find these new compounds. Next, new normal, 3D printing, very interesting. Now we've all heard stories of transplant patients waiting to get their liver transplanted, their heart transplanted, their corneas transplanted, and they just weren't able to find a match. 3D printing promises to change all of that because they can now synthetically produce liver cells, they can synthetically produce skin cells, corneal cells, and these can be matched to the blood type and the white blood cell types of the patients into which these parts will now be going. So no longer do people have to wait on a transplant list. They can, at some point in 5 to 10 years, we will be able to produce these organs in the lab and then transplant it into the patient. And most importantly, the thing that gets me very excited is that there are a lot of companies in India that are pushing the envelope on this new technology, on bio 3D printing. And some of these companies we've named here today, it promises to be one of the biggest verticals for health tech going forward. So with that, I'd like to shift gears a little bit to agri-tech. I won't spend too much time here, but just to say that farmers today are some of the poorest citizens in India for a very specific reason. For 70 years, there's been a stagnation in the agricultural sector, and farmers are not able to get market prices or consumer prices for their products. Now, recently, with the Atmanirbhar Bharat reforms, with rapid deregulation of the sector, And with the use of agri-tech, we can now, as PM Modi has promised our farmers, by 2022 or 2023, we can double farmer income and have them live with a little more dignity in our country. Agri-tech promises to increase yield by 40%, productivity increase of 60%. We can reduce spraying costs and water savings by about 30%, and we can benefit 140 million farmers this way. So the savings, the reduction of wastage, and the increase in farmer income are huge positives to incorporating agri-tech at a national scale for our farmers. Just a quick example here of iBono, a foremost agri-tech company that has their seed to plate technology, where they monitor from when the seed goes into the soil, starting here. They monitor it with their partner nurseries. They monitor how the seedlings are growing. They do real-time farming, and then they look at the delivery to the retailer. They are using technology to mark all of this so that they know where the failure points are. They know where the farmers need help. And then they're also monitoring from the time of harvest all the way to collection, and when consumers like you and I place the order, and then when it actually gets delivered to our house. And this is really increasing efficiency and bringing growth in the income of the farmer, because farmers can now tell where the breakdown points are, and iBono helps them figure out how to get around that break point and increase their harvest, increase their income. So quickly moving direction to India Stack. India Stack has been the backbone of the rapid response we have seen from the government to our citizens, especially to the bottom of the pyramid. We saw very early on in the lockdown with the PM Garib Kalyan Yojana, which brought benefits to 80 crore people in India in a population of 138 crores. It was remarkable, one of the biggest impact measures ever in the world. And this is because of India Stack. Because of the Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile program, the government had these ready databases, and they had the ready bank account information of Jandan account holders. They were quickly able to send money to below the poverty line families, to women, to our farmers, to rural workers, to so many people because of India Stack. And India Stack's other advantage is it's a presence-less layer, which really helped us during COVID, because we do not want to be in the presence of each other and have the infection transmission go on. It's a paperless layer. At a time when all offices were closed, we could not push paper around. These digital platforms are what really helped us. Cashless layer, we could send payments to each other and hence not have to back up money anywhere. And of course, the consent layer, which is the most important layer in the background for all of this. India's tech first governance. It is with great pride that that we made this presentation, because India is really pioneering tech-enabled governance, and we have to go no further than to look at the Arogya Setu app's success. The Arogya Setu app quickly came together because people wanted real-time information of what's going on with the virus. Where is it spreading? From whom is it spreading? Like, is it people who have traveled from, say, Bangalore or from Bombay, from Delhi? And so the government put all this information together through a volunteer-led partnership and set up Arogya Setu. The time taken for an app to reach 50 million users is the best metric that the world uses to gauge the engagement to an app. Previously, this record was held by Pokemon Go, and all of you all must know how addictive this game is, and that is how it reached 19 days to reach 50 million users so quickly. Arogya Setu, because of the engagement that was brought upon on the app, it reached 50 million users in 13 days. Today, it has crossed 110 million users, and it promises to be one of the biggest empowering mechanisms for Indian citizens in this trying time of COVID. Tech-enabled governance, and I'll wrap up very quickly after this. But as I was mentioning earlier, the government was able to do a very quick direct benefit transfer to 420 million beneficiaries. And this is huge. In most other countries, we saw the time taken for the benefits to actually get to the bank accounts. It took so many days, but in India, it took a matter of less than a week, because they had this, the UPI interfaces They had these huge databases. So they knew the women Jandan account holders. These were all verified accounts of women who had Jandan accounts. They had the PM Kisan database of farmers because they were already giving them DBT. They had the Ujjwala Yojana beneficiaries of gas cylinders who got not only money support, but 86 million free Ujjwala cylinders were distributed so that women could keep cooking smoke-free in their kitchens and keep their families alive through this through these trying times. Construction workers got a fair amount of support. You know, we saw a lot of backlash in the media about the migrant crisis, and to a certain extent, they're right. We have to treat our migrants better. They have traveled a lot of kilometers to be able to find good jobs. But we also have to recognize that the migrants aren't the only labor in India. There are a lot of construction workers who come locally, and whoever the government knew of in the construction industry, they gave them 23 million of them got support during this trying times, which was very important because infrastructure development came to a standstill during the lockdown. Vulnerable populations like old age people, widows, disabled persons continued receiving pensions and DBT through the lockdown so that they could sustain themselves. And the government also took over the EPFO payments, not only from the employer side, but also from the employee side. This is the Employee Provident Fund organization, which collects the money to give people provident benefits later. And the government took over paying both 24% of the contribution for 3 months. And this was remarkable because people knew that after the lockdown, they had this money that the government had given them that they could bank on. So in conclusion, even though the COVID lockdown has been swift, it's been simultaneous around the world, and it's really something to worry about because the recessionary effects of this COVID, we're still waiting to see how deep it is. But I think India's long-term growth story is intact because we have very good fiscal health. We have one of the lowest external debt to GDP ratio. Over the last 6 years, especially, the government has done a tremendous job in keeping this ratio low. We have a very low trade deficit also, which helps us come out of COVID easier. We also have a very good demographic dividend because, of course, as MDP mentioned, the southern states may have lower fertilities and we might see declining population soon, but the northern states have very young populations. And so if only we can find a way to harness this demographic dividend by giving them all jobs in the north, by providing, say, labor-intensive industries and starting infrastructure projects in the north so that they can all be employed, then we start seeing very good economic growth come out of having a very young population. So with that, I will stop, and we're very happy to take questions. Thank you.
So thank you for that very, very, very enlightening speech, and opening our eyes to the real the facade of pandemic and the impact on the economy and what we could do and where the economy is heading to. I have listed out about 7 questions. I'll start with a question from Mr. ARN Murthy, who wants to know that India being home to best economists, economic advisors, why is the economy the way it is now, and what corrective measures, and where is the difficulty?
MDP, you have to unmute yourself.
India has deep structural problems in our economy, and we have to factor that in. The first problem is 43% of our people depend on 15% of GDP agriculture growing at 3%. That means 57% of people depend on 85% of GDP growing at 7 to 8%, as industry and services. So the per capita income of people depending on agriculture is only 55,000 rupees, on industry is 1,60,000, and on services 2,21,000. So we have a lot of people depend on the land. It's come down from 60% to 43% over the last 15 years. So we have to shift them from the land to labor-intensive industries and to services. And most of these people are in North India, not in South India. For example, Bihar's per capita GDP is 49,000 rupees. And UP is 69,000 rupees. Karnataka is 2,53,000 rupees. And Telangana is 2,55,000 rupees. And Maharashtra is 2,32,000 rupees. Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Telangana, Maharashtra, and Kerala have a per capita income in excess of 2,35,000 rupees. Whereas UP with 22 crore people, Bihar with 13 crore people have 69,000 and 49,000. So we need a lot of labor intensive industry in the north of India. And that is all, but all the industries are coming to the south. The third big issue is our low level of urbanization. The world is 52% urban. China is 59% urban. India today is about 35% urban. Tamil Nadu is 49% urban. And in the north, Bihar is 11% urban. Why is urbanization required? Urbanization doesn't mean big cities like Bangalore, Bombay, and Delhi. There are 7,000 census towns. Census towns are towns denoted as towns in the census. Now, they got population of 50,000 plus. And we need to develop those towns so that people come there, because urbanization leads to concentration of human activity, aggregation of human activity. Aggregation of human activity leads to specialization. Specialization leads to productivity, and higher productivity leads to higher wages. Now, you can't have all of them coming to big cities, so we have to grow the cities. I've just given you 3 of the points which are there. And lastly, we have too many regulations. We have too many control, too many regulation, less governance. We have very less governance. Our lives are not safe. Law and order is not very secure. So we have deep structural problems. We will continue to grow despite this, but we have to solve these problems. And that is the reason why I think we are not grown 9% a year like China. Of course, China can do control and command. We can't do that. But nevertheless, we've grown well, but we need to restructure dramatically within the economy.
Thank you, sir. Second question is from Mr. Pradyumna. Now that we are facing worst healthcare crisis, is it not a good opportunity to invest in healthcare and ramp up medical education?
Nisha, you know all the data.
Yes. No, absolutely. See, one of the first recommendations that came out from multiple people during COVID is to look at not just short-term care for COVID, but long-term as well. See, if you look at India has about 720 districts, and we can estimate maybe 200 or 220 districts have good healthcare, and the remaining 500 do not. So definitely one of the first investments the government has to start making is a large multidisciplinary hospital with 500 beds in each of these 500 districts. And there's so many advantages that come out of this. They can start an ambulance service that can cater to the people all over the district. And if they have these hospitals in every district, then all doctors and medical staff won't want to come to Bangalore or Bombay for work the way they do now. They can work in their home districts, in these hospitals, and still be able to be of immense service to their districts. So this is one. Healthcare definitely needs to go up, and that starts with a hospital in every district. Medical education. Now, WHO, the World Health Organization, has estimated that India has a scarcity of about 6 million doctors and maybe twice that of nursing staff, diagnostic staff, radiology staff, and pathology staff. So India has to ramp up the doctor training and medical staff training to be able to take on this shortage. Now, our recommendation there is if the top 20, 30 medical colleges can be allowed to double their capacity, train more doctors. Already it is happening. MBBS and PG both have increased the number of seats from 50,000 to 80,000 for MBBS and from to 35,000 for postgraduate, I think. But we need to increase this more, and we have to look at it as a 20-year plan where every year we increase by 5%, and maybe 10 years, 20 years down the line, we have doubled our medical workforce so that all of you all don't need to take the kind of stress that you all are taking today. We definitely need more. Yes.
Thank you for that. Now, we've been seeing in the social media, WhatsApp and WhatsApp universities that yesterday's cricket gurus became today's pandemic guru, and when the border skirmish happened, they became defense specialists. So boycott China is the patriotic call now. So I wanted to ask the question, but Mr. Vinay also has asked this question: is boycott China a realistic thing, or would it help? Raw materials for medications, all medications in bulk do come from China. How practical is it? And would it lead to local increase in manufacturing and production?
You know, this is a very strategic issue for the country because, you know, in the lockdown, we've seen that China could not export and we were in some kind of a distress, except China came back within 2 or 3 months. So what the government has done is to make sure they incentivize production of APIs. Remember, 20 years back, India was the largest API exporter. Then China came and started exporting and getting huge capacity. And they created huge capacity primarily because they could invest. And India stopped investing in APIs and went into formulations. And formulations we dominate. 42% of generic formulation in the US comes from India. So the government has now got a 40,000 crore plan to do that. What we need is to look at each sector, find out where we are over-dependent. If you're importing 20-25% is fine, but importing 75%, we are in deep trouble. And create an incentive program where Indian manufacturing can come up. We can't boycott China because we integrate in the global supply chain. We have to work with the rest of the world, but we have to have certain capacity up to a point, and that's what we need to do. Of course, we are finding that there are many patriotic people who are saying boycott China. I think most of them don't understand how integrated everything is, because if stop APIs, we'll not get our drugs in 6 months' time. So we got to have a strategic plan in all these areas. We've done that in the mobile phones. Today, India manufactures 250 mobile phones. Value added is only 30%, but still we do it. And you know, it may go to 50% soon because we are a very large market. In drugs, we got to do in the backward integration. In automobiles, we got to do in parts. In electric vehicles, you got to do. So we got to look at the whole thing where we are dependent and try to do something to make sure that we're not too over-dependent. America is doing that. Everybody is doing that. The last point is look at telecom. We have destroyed our telecom industry. Of course, ITI is a great failure, but Huawei controls 60% of the market. That means all your data, what you're speaking, could go to a server in China because they are not very secure about what is there in that equipment. So government is now all around the world stopping 5G from Huawei. So we have to make sure that we invest to create capacity, not be over-dependent. We trade, but not depend.
So the next question is from Mr. Arun. And that's something that may interest. He says this is era of startup. Most companies are now currently forced to terminate employees. Therefore, what is the single most factor that could help the startup apart from attracting more capital investment?
We have been writing to government to say that, look, you have to give them liquidity. You know, out of the $60 billion that came in the last 6 years, only 10% is Indian. We are going to become a digital colony. We got freedom in 1947. You know, 18 of the 32 unicorns have got majority investment from overseas sources. They're all domiciled overseas. Most of our best companies, startups are all owned by Chinese or Americans. Indians don't own it because we are not investing enough. I don't think what they need, the startups require is more capital. Maybe some of those guaranteed loans, 3 lakh crores of guarantees don't given to MSMEs, they must do it. Nisha, you want to add anything?
So I also want to add that, you know, if you look at the United States, a lot of the startups started thriving because the government started buying what they're providing, right? The technology platforms, a lot of the products, the government became the largest procurer for those startups. And now those startups have grown into multi-billion-dollar companies. So in India also, the government needs to do the same. In fact, Dr. Satya, going back to your previous question as well, how do we ramp up the API industry and the pharmaceutical industry? It's when the government starts procuring. A big example here is, you know, we've seen with COVID, we didn't have enough critical components. We didn't have PPE. We didn't have, you know, all these antivirals, antibacterials that we needed. Now, if the government can start this national stockpile system where they have stockpiles of critical components all over the country, each state has a critical component stockpile around the state, separate stockpiles. This will start such a big procurement that our startups and our companies can, who are making those products, can get these large orders. They can produce in high volume and they can produce at scale, keep the cost low. That is how you get the economy going. And we'll see even with startups, if the government can procure some of these technology platforms, if they can start using these products more and pay our startups for doing it, we see the startups can bounce back very quickly, keep their employment, and even increase employment with this with the government support.
Right. Now, this question I would pose it to Ms Nisha Holla. Nisha, you brought up this interesting, thing about DOSI, which is medical wearables. Johns Hopkins has had come out many years ago, 6-7 years ago, I suppose, with wearables and establishing a critical care ICU at home for patients. Now, in the same breath, Manipal Hospital, Bengaluru, 5-member team led by me, we have been monitoring 14 districts of Karnataka. Government.
Wonderful job.
We are interfacing through telemedicine platform, Zoom to be precise, and it is about 5 hours per day to remotely monitor and advise the physicians there. So that brings me back to this bug works and other things that you alluded to. In the last James Bond movie, he is told that technology has overgrown so much that Mr. James Bond, you are redundant. And the Bond has a touch reply. He says, Madam, you still need me to pull the trigger or not to pull the trigger. So you need, despite the remote logistics and technological logistics, and that is the question that our General Secretary, Dr. Sharan Srinivasan, much acclaimed neurosurgeon, also is asking. Are we going to be redundant, doctor community, in the sense you create more doctors, you create more telemedicine, wearables, critical monitoring. So are we going to, take up computational physics? Should we?
No, absolutely not. I do not see a situation where people like you who have so selflessly, given your lives to monitoring people and making sure they get better. With technology, I have interfaced with a lot of life sciences technology companies, and the first thing they tell me is without interfacing with doctors and without having doctors on our team, we will not be able to build these platforms, because doctors have the human touch. They know what's going on when a patient gets ill. They know how to go about, what kind of therapeutics, what kind of care to give the patient. And that is what we have to teach technology. See, we have to understand that technology is not here to replace us, but only here to supplement us. All of the health tech platforms that I mentioned are as a supplement to doctors. For example, SIGTUPL that I mentioned, they do rapid diagnostics of biological fluids like blood, urine, etc. I see this as a supplement, because instead of of the medical staff, sitting on the microscope and getting parallax error all the time and trying to see one cell against the other cell, I know I have many doctors in my family. I know what kind of grueling work that can be. So the idea is to have technology take over those routine tasks so that doctors' time can be freed up to do more of the important things. I would say is for actually to care for the patient, to make sure that the patient is getting the best level of care, and to make sure the technology is working correctly. We cannot afford to have technology go off the rails here. So we need you all to make sure that it's giving the right results and contributing to the care of the patient.
Thank you. The next question is, I think this has been answered. Mr. Deepak Inamdar has asked, how long does India have to depend upon China? I think that has been answered in the second question or so. The next question is for MDP. Now that, he is legendary on, Twitter, and then, it takes on any and every journalist who is straying, away across the line. And there are questions asked. 20 lakh crore MDP, only you can, imagine and draw the appropriate zeros. I can't. So now on one hand, the government says we have disbursed or we are disbursing 20 lakh crore. How is it going to be visible to common man? How do I see that government has spent money? Because this comes as a, favorite critic, on the social media platform.
Well, out of 20 lakh crores, 8.5 lakh crores is the Reserve Bank of India's liquidity. That means interest rates have come down. Banks have to use the money to lend. Banks are not lending. So much of the money is still come back as deposit to the RBI. So it is not gone out of the system. That's point number one. Point number two, government is giving something like about 1.5 to 1.5 lakh crores as income support. Out of income support, about 90,000 crores has already gone out. It has gone to all those farmers, those women by DBT, etc. I think government has given the data. It has gone there to pay for the rations, etc. But that money has gone out. And in the next maybe 3 to 4 months, the balance money will go up. Now the 3 lakh crores the government has to go to people has guaranteed loans. About 30 have to borrow the money. Now 1 lakh crore will go to investment at farm gate, but that will take 2 or 3 years. About 2 lakh crore will go to farmers for this Rabi, for this Kharif crop, where I think they're going to draw the money by debit cards. So that money will go out. 50,000 crore is an MSME fund that has to go out. And there is some more money that has to go out for various things. So I think, direct payments to people will be maybe 1.5 lakh crores, maybe over the next 3 to 4 years. But my view, Doc, is that whatever the government has done is inadequate because, we don't know how deep the problem will be. Because right now, in this quarter, April, May, June, we come to the end of June, it's been a disaster. April, May, June, the negative growth in the economy could be 10%. So government may have to pump in more money to be given to people as grants, as rations. But one thing is clear, Doc, the middle class has been totally ignored. Yes. The government is focusing on the bottom 60% of the population. And that's what Prime Minister is speaking. Prime Minister is already talking about the poor, the bottom 60%. I don't think he's going to give anything else to the rest. So there is a problem about the middle class because the middle class is not getting anything. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people have seen salary cuts, and it is bad. I do hope in the next 3 to 4 months, they'll at least give a tax break to the middle class to say that we're going to reduce the taxes. At least they'll get some more money and do something else for the middle class. So it is there, but we got to understand that the government is focused on taking care of the bottom 60% and making sure liquidity is there for industry to hire back people. The biggest challenge we have today is jobs. Now, if you give away the money, where are the jobs going to come? There are going to be no jobs. Yep. So we have to give money to the business enterprises, loans for them to go back to production, ramp up the economy, and to create the jobs. So that's what the government strategy has been. We have to wait and see because the problem has not gone away. So I think, the government has to do still more, and I'm sure they'll do it.
Dr. Satya, if I could just add to that, all of us are honest taxpayers, and I, for one, have been very disappointed with the government support coming to taxpayers. So just to put some data on the table, right? We are 138 crore population. Do you know how many people file an income tax return? Hardly 5.5 crore people. That is just for filing an income tax return. Out of that, only 3 crore people actually pay taxes. Out of that, 13 lakh people contribute to 60% of India's taxes. That is an extremely high tax burden. It's one of the highest in the world. And now with COVID, with all, income has been hit, savings has been hit. We've all been pulling money out of our savings to just survive. And the fact that the government has not brought out a tax break for the 3.3 crore people who contribute to 100% of the tax revenues in the country, of the income tax revenues in the country, it's pretty disappointing. And I really hope the government will consider giving a tax break to honest tax-paying citizens who are propping up the Indian economy. So I, for one, are really hoping against hope that the government does something about us.
And all of you are in the 13 lakhs. All of you are there in the 13 lakhs.
Thank you very much. There is a lot of appreciation coming from every user. There are many questions that I could not take up, and my apologies given the time constraints. I would request Sharan Srinivasan to propose the vote of thanks.
Okay. I'll tell you, MDP sir, it was a mind-blowing presentation. It was, like I always say, brain surgery without anesthesia. I'm quite adept at doing at a different level. So I think you have joined our ilk now to do brain surgery without anesthesia. I still have to do the incision, but you have done it even the incision also. So thank you very much, both of you, Ms Nisha Holla and MDP sir, for a fantastic presentation. I'm hoping that we doctors will also become more tech friendly than this. I also thank all the organizations, BBB, BPF, BBF, and BBB for the partnership of making this happen. This was a very humble role that BBB has played in building a digital platform where we can get all like-minded people together to thrash out different aspects, cross industry, expertise, so that we can really make it comprehensive. Like you said, unless the engineers and the medical doctors work together, many of the gadgets are of no use for people like us. We don't even know how to use them. So a lot of effort that has gone in really does not work. I use a very favorite word. We need to Gobi Manchurianize this business. Make it nice. The moment we say Chinese food, the only first dish that comes to all our minds is Gobi Manchurian, but it doesn't exist in the Chinese industry. So we need to do that. And I think we need support of people like you, both financial and otherwise, and intellectual and everything else, to really make people like us give us the direction to make it happen. Thank you all the listeners and the participants for the fantastic participation, and continue to support us so that we can dish out more like things to you. And God bless all of you. A moment silence to all the martyrs, who lost their lives on the Chinese border. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Jai Hind. Thank you, Nisha Holla. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellargu namaskara. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Dr. Satya, for inviting me. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.